Do you know that one of Saturn's moons is so hollow it would actually float on water? Or that Jupiter might have diamonds in its clouds? These and other amazing facts are in the new book, 1000 Facts About Space, by astronomer Dean Regas, who joins us next in today's episode.
Three, two, one. Engine full power.
Welcome to Your Space Journey, where we venture into the future of space exploration. Your journey begins now.
Hello, and thanks for joining me for Your Space Journey. I'm your host, Chuck Fields. Today, I'm pleased to introduce my friend and astronomer, Dean Regas, from the Cincinnati Observatory Center. Dean Regas is an astronomer, writer, and educator who is best known for his work as the Outreach Astronomer at the Cincinnati Observatory, where he has been sharing the wonders of the cosmos with audiences of all ages for over a decade. He's recently released two new books, 1000 Facts About Space and How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto, which are aimed at bringing the latest research and discoveries in astronomy to a wider audience. 1000 Facts About Space is a fun and engaging guide to the universe, packed with fascinating facts and stories about stars, galaxies, planets, and more. Meanwhile, How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto is a humorous and practical guide for anyone who wants to learn more about the dwarf planet and the ongoing debate over its planetary status. Both books are perfect for anyone who has ever looked up at the night sky and wondered what's out there.
Your Space Journey.
Dean, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's always a pleasure seeing you again. And I have to admit, your books are amazing, especially the latest books I want to talk to you about, the 1000 Facts About Space. I know it's geared towards kids, but I think it's great for adults alike. I'm really enjoying it. And I know I love it. Love it. I know it's part of the National Geographic Kids series. I was just curious, how did your partnership with National Geographic and this book come about?
Well, it's kind of a roundabout story is that I give a lot of talks at the Cincinnati Observatory. That's my main job, is doing education with them. And one of the talks I gave was at a special program we call Late Night Date Night. So this is for adults only, happens like 10:30 at night till midnight. It's after hours, a little more. It's like this hot ticket too. Everybody wants to do this. And like we sell out in about 5 seconds whenever we post it online. And one of the people that came to the late night date night was like blown away by my talk, the way I kind of talk about astronomy in a very unique way. And she used to work for National Geographic. And now, of course, it's not like then the next day I had a book deal. It was several years in the making of getting this together. But she made the introductions, and I think it was after that I kind of have a very unique way of writing, which kind of mirrors how I talk also. And I think I'm glad you see that this is a book. It's marketed for kids, but that's the way I always talk and write. I pretty much talk to everybody the same way. And I think it comes to adults too, that adults can pick up this stuff and really find some cool stuff in it.
See, that's what's amazing. And what I really like too is because I've been an amateur astronomer for years. And, I've been coming to the Cincinnati Observatory. And again, anyone in the area, I highly recommend you and the whole team at the Observatory Center are fantastic. You do have a great wit about you when you're teaching. You certainly don't make astronomy boring. You make it exciting. And that does definitely come across in your books. The facts in this book are amazing. I thought I knew everything, not trying to be arrogant or cocky, but I've been in the field for a long time as an amateur. But there are so many things I learned, like the possibility of diamonds floating in the clouds of Jupiter. I'm like, what?
Yeah, it is. It's one of those theoretical things. It's not like we're going out there scooping up stuff with the Juno spacecraft and be like, all right, diamonds, let's hawk these things and let's pay for NASA for the next decade.
Yeah.
It's thought of the composition of the gas giant planets are so unique. It's, we think of Earth. Earth is our good example of a planet, rocky atmosphere, water, all that stuff. But the gas giant planets, it's hydrogen and helium, but under these weird pressures and weird systems where they're in theory could be diamonds forming in the upper atmosphere of Jupiter, raining, not exactly. I might have been a little exaggerating with the raining part, but anyway, floating around and falling. Yeah, I guess if it's falling, that's close enough. But yeah, so it's an interesting thing. And what's going on with Jupiter in the atmosphere is we're still not able to really detect too much of what's going on below the surface, even with the Juno spacecraft out there. Jupiter is definitely locking up its secrets, and even the Great Red Spot is still a mystery to us in a lot of ways.
Oh, it's fascinating. And that's the thing too. Another thing I love about this book too is it's not like you're going, here's fact one and just read straight to 1,000. I love how you group them. You know, here's solar system facts, here's space exploration facts, here's galaxy facts, and more. How on earth, no pun intended, did you decide on 1,000 facts?
That was a National Geographic thing, that's for sure. They like these nice round numbers, and so this is your classic, Nat Geo kind of book with these great pictures that go with it. And yeah, I broke it down by section. So yeah, there's a section on, like each planet, and on the Pluto and the Plutoids and galaxies, and even space travel, like going to the moon, robotic missions, that kind of stuff. And it just all added up to be 1,000. And it was, I think people will say, well, is it exactly 1,000? I'm like, yes, it is exactly 1,000. They checked and double checked, and I gave them way more than 1,000. So these are the 1,000 that made the cut, which is kind of interesting. So there could be a more 1,000 facts about space that could come out at some point.
That would be cool too. Now, one thing I do want to kind of wonder is, as you're gathering your plus 1,000 facts, what surprised you the most?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think, there's a lot of fields of study that I follow pretty well. So like, what's going on with certain missions, like the Cassini mission around Saturn was a big supplier of information for the Saturn chapter. What's going on with exoplanets and astronomers finding other worlds around other stars. The part that I'm less up on is things like stellar evolution, how stars change over time, what's going on inside of big stars, and the various ways stars die, which is really fascinating too. So it was a good way for me to study things like that, study about galaxies, and I'd like to say, studying more about black holes, that kind of thing. But what I find is there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes around black holes, and that's one of it's one of the tougher topics to talk about, because people are so interested in black holes in theory, and because they have this in their head of what's going on in a black hole. You fall in, then what happens to you? And the problem is for educators like myself, there's not a lot of answers to tell people. They're like, yeah, what's happening inside of a black hole? And I'm like, I don't know. And then they're like, all right, well, that wasn't a very exciting answer. So it's like one of the most exciting subjects with one of the least exciting payback answers.
Well, I think, you're actually in a perfect position, because as an astronomer at the Cincinnati Observatory Center, you see these thousands of visitors, and that tens of thousands or more that come, and they ask questions, and I'm sure you address some of the common questions that they come out with. What were some of those that really resonate with the people that you see?
Well, I would say if I wanted to go with top questions I get, black holes is up there. That'd be in the top 5. What's a black hole? Are we going to get swallowed up by one? That kind of stuff. And the good part about that is that the new pictures, we've got 2 pictures of 2 black holes now. The one in the center of galaxy M87, which came first, which the field here. I mean, if I was a betting person, I would have said the first black hole picture we're going to get is in the center of our galaxy. And yet, no, it's this one in a galaxy far, far away, which tells me that galaxy is scary big. I mean, that black hole is frighteningly humongous. And so those 2 pictures that came out, I think the 2019 was when the first one came out. And that was a really cool moment. I would say in the this last year, the James Webb Space Telescope has been, that gets in the top 5 questions now I get. And that's a really exciting thing, because that's been the story of 2022, I think, was the James Webb Space Telescope in all of science. I think it was the lead science story around. I'm trying to think of, Pluto is still in there as one of the top 5 questions, but I generally get in front of that. And that's with my, because I know that it is a point for adults. And that was kind of the motivation for my other book. There it is.
Let's talk about that.
How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto. Perfect segue.
It is. Because that's another book. This one came out a little bit before, and I have to admit, you've swayed me, because I was the the one, and I don't want to offend anybody out there, but I was always doing the Planet Number 9 kind of thing, and I read this book and realized that I need to open my mind just a little bit more and look at some of the facts. So, what motivated you to write this book? Because I think it's excellent. How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto.
Well, so this is what invariably would happen, ever since Pluto's quote unquote demotion to non-planet status 16 years ago. I would give talks, and I mean, this would be a very frequent thing. I would give a talk. Kids would come up at the end to talk all about space, because my genuine love of the subject comes through in a kid-like way. Kids are like, man, this guy likes space even more than I do. I need to talk to this guy some more, because I got some facts that I want to tell him. So kids would come up and be like, hey, did you hear about this thing on Neptune? Did you hear about this galaxy they found? Did you hear about this star? And I'm like, yeah. Isn't that cool? And then invariably an adult would come up, interrupt us, just break right on in and say, yeah, but Pluto should still be a planet. And I'm like, what are you I was talking here. Like, we weren't even talking about Pluto, and you're breaking in. And so I thought, I was feeling really bad for the kids that don't care, number one, about Pluto, and that they have to endure this back in my day kind of thing, when they're losing the idea to talk to their grown-ups about what's really cool in space. So I thought, I need to write a guide for them to help walk their traumatized adults through the loss of a planet. And this is the book that I've been wanting to do this forever. And I was so glad that this is through Britannica that they put this book together. I even somehow got them to include the 5 stages of grief. So it's illustrated, the 5 stages of grief of losing a planet. And I don't know if you've ever seen a kid's book with 5 stages of grief in it, written in a humorous way. So that's what I've been hearing, is that, people they're like in denial. No, that Pluto's not a planet. And I knew I was onto something when I posted this book was coming out on Facebook, and in the comments, I got all 5 stages of grief in the comments. No, Pluto's not a planet. Oh, you astronomers, I can't believe you did this, anger. And then yeah, well, Pluto should be a planet. Plus we can include some other things. So then you got bargaining, you got depression. I got the sad puppy dog face. And then people, even people wrote in comments, I accept it. So that's my goal, is that I know that it's a very generational divide as to who thinks Pluto is a planet, who doesn't. And I walked my journey too, because I had to go through the same journey. I went through all the stages as well. I didn't think it should be demoted initially, but I got won over by evidence, precedents, and all that. So if anything, I'm hoping that I can move a grown-up one stage along the path. And so if I got you closer to acceptance, if not acceptance, then I'll take it.
I'm not sure what stage of grief I'm in, but I mean, I was in denial at first, and I'm like, oh, okay, I got to read this book, right? And I start reading it. I'm like, oh yeah, and you have some really good facts. I'm saving it for the readers out there. You got to go get this book, How to Teach Grown-Ups About Pluto. Excellent book. And you brought up a good point as you were explaining it too, about how you had the children around, and they're so enthusiastic about science and astronomy. They want to learn more. I was just wondering, you've been there, and you do have this great enthusiasm that comes across with the kids, and they have that. For the parents out there that have kids that are wanting to get more into it, how it can be very overwhelming. A kid gets a telescope for Christmas, and it's one of those rickety ones that kind of frustrates them, and a lot of kids end up, okay, well, that's too overwhelming for me. What advice would you give to kids or their parents, or even adults that kind of want to get more into astronomy but not sure where to begin without getting overwhelmed?
Oh yeah, it does seem like an intimidating subject at first, and I would say that probably what did it for me was a telescope, and the power of telescopes is, I've just seen it over and over and over again, that is the biggest inspirer of people. That is the most tangible thing that is really been a big mover for us here at the Cincinnati Observatory. And that's kind of our whole philosophy: put your eye up to the telescope and you're hooked. That's all you got to do. And it's an easy formula, but it's one that, I didn't have the opportunity to do that as a kid. If there were telescopes around, I didn't know about them. We want to make sure that's, I think, the way to do it is not necessarily buy a telescope yourself, because there is a little bit of you're exactly right. Most of the telescopes you get are not very good, and they're frustrating, and you'll end up turning yourself off to the subject. So getting a good telescope is difficult. So I recommend getting involved with your local astronomy club. There's astronomy clubs all around the country that do this kind of stuff, and their philosophies are very similar to ours. Is education, sharing knowledge, sharing stuff. And the other thing is that the people in those clubs will buy a much better telescope than you will.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I got a telescope sitting over there in my corner there that's the size of a water cooler, or a water heater. But I got the guys in the club and the women in the club have telescopes they have to bring in a flatbed truck. I'm going to use those, and to see through those telescopes is just incredible, and see galaxies and star clusters and nebulas. So that'd be my number one, is get involved with an astronomy club, science center, nature center, museum, or observatory. I think that's the place to go. And because what you're going to find, and I've been all around the country and met everybody at other observatories and other science centers and astronomy clubs. It's like they're all interchangeable. It's almost weird, Chuck. It's like you go to a different astronomy club and you're like, wait, these are the same people in my club, but they look different. Like they talk the same, they have the same philosophy, their same openness. They're like, it's an interesting community, the amateur astronomy community. And so that's what I say is, you don't need to buy a telescope. Use those other people's bigger telescopes, and then you can get your own a little later.
That does make so much sense. And you do have it. As you were talking, I was just thinking, about how you were a traveling astronomer for the Grand Canyon last year, and about that wonderful experience. But also, I'd be remiss if I didn't say how the wonderful events at the Cincinnati Observatory Center just have inspired me and thousands of others. You mentioned some of the amazing events like your late night date night, which I think is really unusual for an observatory to offer that. Can you just tell us a little bit more about some of the other events that are offered at the COC? Because again, folks, COC is not the only one doing it, but there are, as Dean said, all over the world, there are other societies and observatories doing this. So Dean, tell me a little bit more about the highlights of the Cincinnati Observatory Center.
Yeah, the Cincinnati Observatory, we've kind of, we've had to go through this big transition about 20 years ago from a research institution that, in the heart of the city, which had very limited things it could do, to an education center, a resource for the community to come over and use these old telescopes. And so being in the center of a population center was bad for stargazing, but good for people and convenience. And to get people to look through these telescopes has been kind of our big motivating thing. So thinking of creative ways to do that, not just looking at the stars and that kind of stuff. We wanted to kind of think of new and kind of creative ways to do this. And one of the biggest audiences is adults. And we started off working mostly with kids and schools and that kind of thing. And we can take programs out to schools. We can do visits, field trips to the observatory, and daytime and nighttime too. So we can attach solar filters and do a lot of solar viewing. And we've got to talk about some eclipses coming up too, Chuck. So we got to talk about that.
Absolutely.
Those are going to be the big stories of the next year. So my job was kind of like all right, what kind of creative things we can do? And one of our other educators came up with late night, date night. He was he called it late night, and then we added date night. One of our other employees added that, and then it just rang great. And so he started off with that, and just kind of I ran with it after that, because I thought, man, I didn't think people would want to stay up till midnight, but they did. And it was great. So then we also do special events like when Saturn comes around or Jupiter comes around. We pick the things that are the most eye-catching, inspirational kind of things. We don't go for the really faint, fuzzy, kind of distant things. We kind of want to get the classics. So showing people the craters of the moon, rings of Saturn, moons of Jupiter, that kind of thing. Those are the top things. So we do Saturn days when Saturn comes around, Jupiter night when Jupiter comes around, and Marsapalooza when Mars comes around. We're really having this great, it's a real amazing place at the observatory, because you turn the corner and you see this old historic building with this silver dome on the end of it, in this neighborhood, this residential street. And it's like you're back in some weird time warp. You're back in the past. And when people come, they have this great experience that I think sticks with them for a long time. And really unique. And it's I'm so happy with how well it's been received, and we're trying to share this with other observatories of some techniques that they can use to do this as well.
Yeah, it's really amazing too, and the energy is what really blew me away. By, like I said, a lot of the adults are most of the people that show up are the adults, but there's also bring their kids along, which is wonderful. So,
oh yeah, and this is maybe I don't think it's controversial to say, because I think probably adults would agree with this, is that when it comes to astronomy, the average fourth grader is going to know more space than the average adult. And it's because they're learning it. They're in that field right now, and they're in that zone. They're in the star phase of their lives, like they go through the dinosaur stage, then they go through the stars and astronomy stage. And so we want to get them when they're in the astronomy stage. And me as a big kid, I'm still in the astronomy stage, as a overgrown, a kid. And I think that's what there's lots of those adults too that are thinking there's something childlike about doing astronomy, but also just so cool. And so we kind of want to appeal to that as well. And so I've been told I talk to the adults the same way I talk to fourth graders, because I think that's what we all should have, that kind of that outlook and enthusiasm for it.
I totally agree. You do a great job of that, Dean. And you mentioned the eclipse, wonderful eclipse coming next year too. What upcoming astronomy events are you most excited about in the near future?
Yeah, I think there's, this year it's a tricky one, because we've got planetary conjunctions early in the year, but those are okay. Those are pretty good. March 1st is on my calendar as the day Jupiter and Venus come together in the sky, which is a nice little conjunction. We got some meteor showers, which are always hit or miss. It looks like the Perseids in August are going to be the better of the meteor showers this year, but nice. You never know. So with the uncertainties of those things, there is one and two things I should say that are certain that are going to be cool. And so on my calendar, and should be circled on every amateur astronomer calendar, is the 2 solar eclipses coming up within about a year. So we got a partial solar eclipse on October 14th, 2023. So October 14th of this year. Mm-hmm. And then we have a total solar eclipse on April 8th, 2024. Now, the 2024 eclipse is the big one. This is the Super Bowl of all of astronomy for us in this field. This is the best thing to see in all of astronomy. A lot of people remember the 2017 one and where they were that day. And some people that didn't drive to see totality, they better do it this time and see this one. But I don't want people to sleep on the one in October, because this is a partial solar eclipse, which is definitely not as cool as a total solar eclipse. It's not even close. But the partial, what we want everybody to do is to get everything ready and in place by October 14th. We want everybody to have your solar eclipse glasses. We want everybody to have your cameras and do practice taking pictures of eclipses and that kind of thing. All your solar equipment. We want everybody to be ready October 14th. See that one, do the test, use the practice one. And then when April rolls around next year, you will be ready for the big show. Because I think maybe you remember, Chuck, 2017, people were scrambling for glasses.
Yep.
We had like near riots at the observatory, people trying to get their glasses last minute. So get everybody out there, get ready October 14th first, see that one. And then you'll be ready and raring to go for April 8th, 2024.
That is such a good idea. And I actually ordered extra glasses after 2017 just to make sure that I have plenty on record. And my pet peeve, and Dean, I'm sure this is yours. There are some folks out there that say, oh, well, my path is 99%. Why should they definitely strive for the 100%? You and I know, but why don't you explain it to her?
Yeah. 99% blocked. And that's what it'll be at the Cincinnati Observatory, is 99% blocked on April 8th, 2024. That is nothing. I mean, it's good. The sky will darken a little bit, but you got to have totality. And so whatever you can do, get in the path of totality. There'll be maps all around. But basically the path goes from Mexico through Texas up through Indianapolis and Dayton, right. Cleveland, right by. Do you have to go anywhere, Chuck? Or are you just going right through you, or do you have to
I'm
travel?
hoping it's clear. We are right in the 100% path. For once, I could actually walk in my backyard if it's clear.
That is awesome.
So we traveled last time to Metropolis, Illinois, which is actually kind of a neat city where it experienced the 2017 and the 2024. So it's actually getting a double dosage there, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. So it is something we want people to mark on their calendars. We are going to be lobbying to have schools just cancel that day, because it's a weekday for April 8th, unfortunately. So kids will be in schools, but we think it should be a holiday, because any science teacher is not going to be in school that day. Yeah. Any kid with a parent that wants to see it's not going to be in school that day. So we want it to be a kind of a holiday, and Cincinnati is really close to the line. So we want to get people out to see that. We want people to take off work. We will, I have a form letter, an astronomer note that you can give to your employer that says you are free from your work obligations on this day. Whether any employer would honor a letter from me, giving them permission to play hooky, I don't know, but couldn't hurt, I guess.
It sounds official.
Yeah, it sounds official. You get a doctor note, you get an astronomer note, and it's one day out of. This is probably it. I don't think there's any real good ones for a long ways. And I can't remember the next one, but I don't think it comes until the 2040s, I think.
I agree. It's totally rare. And this is a once in a lifetime event. You can see we're both enthusiastic because we've seen a total eclipse of the sun and how beautiful it is to be in that shadow. Oh my gosh. Dean, I'm wrap up there. What's next for you? Any other books coming up? What's coming up for you?
Well, next up for me is we're doing a whole lot of I'm doing kind of my speaking engagements, going around the country doing talks about astronomy. Nice. I've been partnering a lot with the national parks. I think you mentioned that last year I was the astronomer in residence at the Grand Canyon, which meant I got to live and work at the edge of the Grand Canyon with a view out of my apartment of the canyon for a month. I'm going to be going back and doing star parties with Grand Canyon and various other parks out west. So that's going to be the big thing for this year. Going to see the partial eclipse in October, probably out in New Mexico seems to be a good spot to go. And then working on some online programs. So we do online classes at the Cincinnati Observatory. And so if you want to take a class with me, you can be anywhere in the country, take a class with me. You can just go to cincinnatiobservatory.org to learn more about that. And working on kind of spreading the 1,000 facts far and wide, and telling people about how Pluto shouldn't be a planet. That's about it.
Dean, these are great. Thank you again so much for your outreach. These books are fantastic. I'll put links to the Cincinnati Observatory in the show notes, of course, for this. But Dean, I want to thank you. It's always been a pleasure talking with you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure too. Thanks for having me.
Your space journey.
Well, I really enjoyed speaking with Dean today, and I'm loving his 2 new books. And you can find out more about Dean and his books by going to the Cincinnati Observatory Center's website at cincinnatiobservatory.org. I want to thank Dean for joining me today. I want to thank you for joining me as well. Again, we'd appreciate it if you do a small favor and share this episode with a friend. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you next time. God bless.